It's really important for a president or any leader of any organization to set that example so the people who work for them tell them the truth, not just what they think they want to hear. Another quality that's important for leaders is a relentless focus on what matters. Most executives that I work with in the business world have that. Most of them, when I talk with clients about communicating goals for their organization, they may not be doing it very effectively, but most of them usually have 3 or 4 things they really want the organization to focus on and achieve. You all probably remember when Governor Bush ran for governor, he had 4 things. And education, welfare, tort, juvenile justice reform. And he talked about them all everywhere. I remember once I wrote a speech, it was a group of law enforcement officers. And so I just focused on the juvenile justice reform. And he said, "What are you doing?" He said, "They care about education too. They would need to hear about my welfare plan." He wanted to give them the whole thing, all 4, every stop. And so, but you focus on those key things and then you work on them until you get them done. I remember once he was meeting with an education leader and he asked about goals for student success. And the leader very proudly told him, "Oh, we have 50 standards that we measure against." And Governor Bush looked at him and said, "Well, what if reading is number 49? In other words, you can have so many goals that there are no goals. And so as president, you have to have great clarity of focus. And I have a favorite story about that from my time at the White House. It was the weekend after September 11th. And as you might imagine, it had been a horrible week at the White House. We'd all been working round the clock, and on Sunday afternoon, the president called me down to the White House and wanted to meet with me to talk about what became his speech to the joint session of Congress. And we went over an outline. He knew the American people had a lot of questions. Just who are these Al-Qaeda? Why do they hate? Why would they attack us? And so we went over an outline of what he wanted to say in this speech. And by the time we finished, it was almost dinner time on Sunday evening, and I made a big mistake. I decided, well, I won't call the chief speechwriter tonight. It's a Sunday night. He's got young kids. It's been a horrible week. I'll just talk to him first thing Monday morning when I see him in the West Wing. Well, first thing Monday morning, I saw the president before I saw the chief speechwriter, and the president said, "How's my speech coming?" And I said, "Well, Mr. President, I'm going to get with Mike and we'll get to work on it right away." And he said, "Well, you better hurry up because I want to see a draft tonight." Well, I was aghast. I mean, major speeches, I knew we didn't have weeks. We usually spend weeks, but I knew at least a few days. And I said, "Well, Mr. President," I said, "that's just impossible." And he smiled and he said, "By 7. And so I frantically called the speechwriter and I said, "I made this huge mistake. I should have called you last night. Here's the outline. He wants a draft tonight." Mike said, "That's impossible." And I said, "I tried that." And he said, "By 7. And so we scrambled writers and had them doing different pieces, and we got him a draft. I don't think it was 7, but 8 or so. And he started looking at it, and he would call me every time we got to a page. "Paragraph 7, page 2, that doesn't work at all. Take that out. Paragraph," the phone would ring again. "Page 5, forget it. Page 7, you got to redo that." And he was on the phone with me later that night, I think almost till 10 or 10:30 that I could ever remember talking with him, because he's usually a pretty early to bed guy. And so the next morning at the White House, I went to senior staff meeting and I walked out and bumped right into the president, who said, "How's my speech coming?" And I said, "Mr. President, I was on the phone with you until I went to bed last night." And he said, "And you'll be and I've been at senior staff meeting." And he said, "And you'll be working on it now?" And I said, "Mr. President, I'm on my way to message meeting." And he got about this close to my face with those blue eyes twinkling. And he said, "And you think a message meeting is more important than my speech to an historic joint session of Congress when our nation is at war?" Not anymore, I didn't. The president had clearly focused me on my priorities, and he did that for all of us in the days and years after 9/11, making it so clear to everyone around him and to the nation as a whole that our #1 priority was now preventing another terror attack on our homeland. There are lots of distractions thrown at a president. I used to marvel, you'd go from a meeting about something really complicated like, Middle East peace, to greeting the Muppets to the White House, to honoring last year's Super Bowl champions, to a state dinner with the Prime Minister of Japan. You're pulled in so many directions. You have to have great clarity of focus.